Hi, welcome to our podcast today. I'm Mary Abazia. With me is Tom Spitali and Sean Wellham. And we're always listening for interesting stories. And one of them that we just heard is how Southwest has made an announcement that they're going to switch their seating policy from open seating to assigned seating. And at first, this sounds like, okay, but that is what they thought was their differentiator for a very long time. And ironically, research that they provided shows that over 80% of their customers and 86% of potential customers really want to have assigned seats. So they weren't listening to their customer, number one. And two, hello, they probably would have made a whole lot more money if they started to charge more for different seats. So the whole thing about this is they thought that was a differentiator. And clearly it wasn't their differentiator. It got stuck in the past. So Tom, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, wow, lot to unpack here. At one time that was a differentiator, right? When they first started and it fit the brand image so well, this idea of sort of a more egalitarian airline, hey, if you got there early, you got a better seat kind of thing, first come, first served, or whatever. And generally speaking, personally, I think companies change strategies and effective taglines way too often, way too often. But I think this points out something that's really important, and that is the world and the business world especially has become so dynamic that you've got to continually look at what you're doing and making sure it matters to customers. Mary, you talked about differentiation. Well, there's a false differentiation and a real true differentiation. False differentiation is when you just do something differently and you think it's a strength in your SWOT analysis, which is kind of, we don't like SWOT very much because of this, and a differentiator that really matters to customers. But this one ceases to matter to customers at some time in maybe the distant past for Southwest, but they kept doing it maybe to their detriment. So, it really speaks to this idea that SWOT is dangerous. SWOT is dangerous, you guys agree? I mean, let's talk about SWOT because it's still used, throughout the business world, in my opinion, much too often.
Yeah, I think the key thing is when it lacks a customer perspective.
Yeah.
It's perfectly reasonable to say, what are our strengths as a business? What are we good at? And also looking at the external threats from competition and what have you. It's not a bad idea, but when it's taken as a standalone piece of analysis, it just leads you to reconfirm prejudices. Maybe if you believe something, then you will have it as a strength. I remember when I worked for GE for many years, we were quite proud back in the 90s of being AAA credit rated. And we were this most admired company by other CEOs. There's all these strange accolades going around. So when we got together, we would do this SWOT type analysis and we'd say, oh, we're one of the most admired companies from Fortune 500 CEOs. Well, that's not actually a strength because none of our customers cared about that, not one. But we can get caught up in what we think is a strength, and we can repeat our AAA credit rating, our most admired company. We go out to the market, and they're not strengths, not from the customer's perspective. So the danger with SWOT is it can reinforce your internal beliefs. It doesn't stress test. It doesn't involve customers. And anything that doesn't involve customers, you're always taking a little bit of a risk, I think.
Yeah. So Sean, you make a good point. If it's a customer focused or customer driven SWOT, then it's a nice way to organize, a couple of points, not a lot like you see a laundry list of, oh, this is all the strengths, these are all our weaknesses, opportunities and the threats. Frankly, that should be prioritized as well. To be able to say this segment of customers finds these 2 or 3 things important. You can put it in the SWOT, put those 3 points in, and then as a group, you look at that and you go, okay, what are we going to do to really, be able to leverage this in some way? And if we have some weaknesses, we better fix them. But there certainly was no customers putting, open seating. It was stressful. And the funniest part of it all was the reason they finally decided that they were going to do it is that the CFO said, hey, you guys, and some very active investors said, you guys are not making money. And, in airlines, it's thin margins anyway. And if you have a couple of issues, like they had a couple, recently, you really are putting yourself behind the eight ball. And there's segments that exist that do want to sit in business class. And there are segments of people that will pay more and in advance and pay for first class. So, they left a lot of money on the table for a long time. So
I think it's an interesting question. What changed about customer needs? I mean, that's really where the focus should be, right? I mean, it's very clear that at one point, the Southwest customer did, value the open seating policy and the whole gestalt of, what Southwest Airlines stood for. So what do you guys think changed about the Southwest customer? What need changed that caused the open seating to cease to be something that they cared about?
Well, I think it's like they were pretty much competing with buses for a long time. So it was point to point. People were used to that as a model. You don't have assigned seating on buses. So maybe as they changed and opened up, they attracted more customers that were traveling from California to the East Coast. So those longer routes, it does matter if you're in the middle seat more. So maybe it came about as they changed their business model, they attracted different segments of flyers, and the competition raised the bar. I mean, for years, you could Delta, United, like, no, we have the best business class. So they're really, I think that they're elevating, the other competitors were elevating how important it is to have really good seats on a flight. So that's my hypothesis. Sean?
I think also with airlines, it's a really unusual market because this idea of preference doesn't always translate to choice, because you will choose the airline that is most convenient in terms of time, in terms of making the connection, whatever it is. If you can get from A to B in the time frame that you want to do it in, within a price point that's within your sort of budget or expectation, you're going to go there. Do you remember, slightly off the point here, but it's about the airline model. Do you remember when United dragged a passenger off the plane, basically knocked him unconscious and dragged him off? But 2017 it was a doctor. And he, that created a storm, and everyone was saying, I'll never fly United, and this is how they treat passengers, I won't do that. And of course, not one single thing changed on their load factor, because people didn't stop using United because they've got to get from A to B. And it's similar with, I think this decision on the seating for Southwest is almost certainly financially driven. Their load factor is about 80%. It's been as high as 83. It's never recovered post-COVID. That hits a low-cost airline. I mean, Ryanair has about an 89, 90% load factor. So that's how you make money in that business model. And if you can charge people for a bit of extra leg room, which they're also part of this is to increase some seats with leg room, so they're going to have premium to a degree. That sort of thing is an extra price point, giving people the ability to book in advance, like Ryanair do. You can book your seat in advance, but it costs you money. All these little things are going to start driving money. But I wonder if they're confusing people that say, I prefer to have a checked-in seat, an allocated seat, versus people that would say, and therefore I will never use Southwest Airline if I've got to get to Houston. Because if that's the airline that goes to Houston, you're probably going to get on it and grumble about it. So I think it'll be interesting how this plays out. It's not happening until 2025. So I'll keep an eye on to see how this plays out. I've always thought airlines are a very odd business model that preference doesn't always lead to choice, but we'll see.
But as you connect these dots back to B2B, to our types of clients, airlines are always a good surrogate for challenging your own business models. So it's easy because we all understand airlines, we all are on them. But then when you look back at, if you have a tractor business, are you talking about your color green? And that's an anti, no one really cares about that anymore. Or, certain types of equipment that it really isn't connected to anything up in, the satellites now that are helping to drive it manless. There's the world moves forward, and we see some of our clients just kind of rest on their laurels, and a lot of it has to do with doing their SWOT analysis and going, yep, that looks like we should stay doing that, and they don't talk to the customers. So
yeah, no, I totally agree. You've got to have this view of saying, what do we do and that we've always done, and should we keep doing it? And the only reason you keep doing something is because it's a point of differentiation that your customers love about you, and they want you to keep it, or it's something that has a financial benefit because it either takes some cost out for you, or it ensures your customer turnover or something like that. But yeah, there should be no sacred cows in business. You should look at everything and decide whether it should stay or go. And that should be part of a standard review, I guess.
See, I think we're all fascinated too with how do you make change before you have to as a business, right? How can you anticipate shifts? How can you anticipate changes in customer needs? That's always, right, the holy grail is anticipating customer needs. It makes me wonder, could this idea of the experience economy, the fact that we've got, millennials are famous for being willing to pay more for experience, spend more of their expendable income on such. Could Southwest had looked at a trend like that, right? And the way we evaluate trends is we don't just go from a trend that we see taking shape to what should we do about it. We route it through, how's this going to change customer needs, right? I just wonder if a Southwest could have anticipated this, right? And of course, or at least hypothesized that, people just, the experience they don't like is standing in that long line. And if they get there late, then you got to wait to the end and get a middle seat, all that stuff. Maybe they could have anticipated a change. Maybe they could have tested assigned seating a little bit earlier. That's all the stuff that we all try to do, and that's what I think makes the idea of looking at trends a couple of times a year. And
yeah, or almost constantly, right? It's almost a sort of, you've always got one eye somewhere or an ear to the ground listening to what trends are happening. I totally agree.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that customers, somebody said in here, destroy your business. And if you are doing, even on an annual basis, some very light research, it could be qualitative research that, you use our famous Vietnam card sort, and you say, what are the most important things to you from any company? And you talk to 10 customers, or you have somebody else do it. And then not only you get those couple of things that are important, then how are we doing, how are other companies doing on it? You very quickly have a gap analysis. And if you're on top, like you were saying, Sean, the AAA rating, if that was at the top, then you would go, oh, we need to do it. But it probably, if anyone had done any light research on it, they would have gone, it's not even on the radar. It's not even important to anyone. But if they started with, so what do you think about, how would you rate us on our AAA rating? People go, well, yeah, you're pretty good at it, because you started with us. And that's what is the danger, or the trap is if you start those discussions with, well, what do you think about our color green? Well, I think your color green is amazing.
Exactly. Reinforce it. You don't confuse what investors care about with what customers care about. That's another golden rule when you're coming down to your strengths. The investors care about different things to your customers. You've got to find a balance.
Ironically, though, with Southwest is the investors were the ones that pushed them to go, hey, look at what the customers want, which is ironic. You don't always get to see that one. So
no, that's very true.
Oh, I think that was fortuitous. I think investors probably, I mean, I don't know, but I'm just going to guess investors were pushing for it. And then the research was like, oh my God, they're right. So I think that was just fortuitous. What I want to pick up on something that you said earlier, Mary, about the Vietnam card sort or a like methodology. Just because we have a couple minutes, I'm going to explain it to those who don't know. Vietnam card sort Sean and I were once in Vietnam, and we did this thing where we put a set of index cards in front of customers and asked them if they were the right things that they were seeking, asked them to, tell us which benefits they were seeking that they missed so that we could write them in, and then ask them to put them in order of importance to them. And the Vietnam card sort was born as probably one of our most popular tools that our customers are using with their customers all the time as a game, which, by the way, gamification is a big trend right now. Everybody loves to play games. This is a game that you get your customers to play that's all about them telling you what they want in a way that allows them to do it because you give them a hypothesis. That's the Vietnam card sort. It should be done continuously, I think. I mean, you've got, Salesforce that's out there. You should train your entire Salesforce on how to do it. And they shouldn't be hitting up the same customers even more than once a year, probably. But if you continuously have that kind of data trickling in, you can begin to see when needs are shifting. And you can be that company that begins to anticipate trends, begins to anticipate customer needs, and that does begin to make moves before you have to. Because when you have to do it, it's never a good thing, right? If you have to do it, something has gone terribly wrong.
Yeah, when the customer tells you what to do, you're probably not leading that particular market, right?
Exactly.
If they even care to tell you.
Well, yeah. You'll find out
Anyway,
when revenue stops.
yeah, so we hope that you take a look in the mirror at your company's strengths and challenge yourself a bit. And if you do see that you're missing something, you'll change that. So thank you very much for joining us.